and welcome to Latina Nomad. First, we want to apologize for the little technical issues we've encountered, but we are live now with Claudia Espinosa. But before I introduce you to her, I want to recap yesterday's discussion with Michelle Carrera, the activist who is going on a cross-country tour with a 6-year-old son, who is absolutely inspirational because of everything that she's pursuing, regardless of the risks that she's had to take. And the 2 tips of advice that she gave us that was really, really amazing was to always remember that regardless of what you're going through, there's always good and bad, and it's gonna get by. But the second one, which was really great, was always have a sounding board. Have someone that you can bounce your ideas off of so that you don't sound crazy. Because sometimes our ideas, we're just like, oh my God, is this real or not? So tune in to her video on our YouTube channel, which you can find on our LatinaNomad.com website. With that said, Claudia, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So Claudia is running an amazing program that she's going to fill us in about. It's called the Love Mentoring Program to empower young Latinas. But before we go into that whole program, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how it is that you got into this program, how that equipped you?
Well, that's quite a long story, but I'll try to make it brief. But about me, I came from Colombia to New York City almost 17 years ago. And back in Colombia, I was studying psychology, and I guess I need to bring that up because that's how I ended up learning about the issues affecting young Latinas through my a job that I had as a counselor, and I was able to get that through my psychology degree. So a little background. I came here in 2000, the year 2000, by myself from Colombia, and I just started pursuing the dreams back then, and that meant just continuing the education that I had started back in Cali, in Colombia, in psychology. But first, I needed to do a lot of things to be able to accomplish that. So I studied English. I became a personal trainer to support myself. I continued my psychology degree in CUNY. And fast forwarded 6 years, I finished the degree in forensic psychology.
Oh wow, congratulations.
Thank
so
you.
Your first goals then were to basically train yourself and immerse yourself in
the
the US
culture.
with the language and
Yes.
the culture. Okay.
Exactly. I was 20 years old. I moved here with that goal of pursuing the dreams that I had, but everything had a step that I needed to accomplish and to continue to the next one. So the first one was that I needed to really learn the language so I could continue my degree, and I studied 2 years of ESL in Queens College, and so that was the first step. As I mentioned, I did that while I was working as a personal trainer, and once I finished that, I applied to John Jay, and I continued my degree in psychology.
So let's go from there. What was that goal setting process like? Because you went from I'm doing psychology to I have to learn the language, of course, to personal trainer. What was all that thought process when you were doing that goal setting process? You'd be so young.
Yeah, the exercising part, I've been exercising my entire life. So when I moved here, and I knew I had to sustain myself financially because I moved here by myself, and my parents were in Norway, to support me in a different country. So I had to make sure that I found a way to do that by myself. So it just came natural to me to figure out how do I make a living here. So I figured the best way, and what I've been doing all my life since I was 15, is to help others to stay to lead healthy lives. So I became a personal trainer and started working as one here. And so it was, like I said, it is all together, and I've always thought about goals in that regard, that things are not separate. You can't put like I'm going to learn English and then I will continue the psychology, or I'm going to like they're not separate. They're all together, and they all lead to one particular goal. So
I think that's what's fascinating, because a lot of times, and that's one of the big things I try to tell people, is when you're you're looking at your goals or to finance your dreams, tap into what you already know and what you're passionate about and what you're good at to be able to develop that. And someone else coming that young would have just been like, oh, let me get a waitressing job or a bartending job. So the fact that you honed in on that and what you loved and what came natural to you is really great.
And you made an important point right there. That to me is all about that, to do what you love. And I think, that's something that I tell people, is that you need to follow your instincts and your intuition, and that's the only way that you can really pursue or accomplish your goals. And so back then, when I was 20, as you were saying, that you're too young to try to know and understand everything. But one thing that I've been good at, I would say, my entire life without even knowing it, is that part. That I will kind of listen to what it is that I really want to do, and then I will follow that.
That's important, and I wish that more people knew how to do that, right? That it's like, just listen to yourself and try to navigate through that, you know, as cumbersome as it may seem. So you set those goals, and that was great. Has your goal setting process changed, or does it still pretty much stay the same when you're setting goals as you continue going?
I think that it is somehow the same. However, I think that now I kind of understand how it works. Before, it was just, it kind of, I was doing it, but I didn't realize what I was doing. Today,
so you're more conscientious of it.
Exactly, yes. Today makes more sense.
Okay.
Yes.
So you went from doing that, so you got your, you know, you mastered the language, you got through the financing yourself to go to school in CUNY. What happened then?
What happened then? So I graduated in 2010 with both bachelor's and master's in forensic psychology. But what happened towards the end of that degree was that I started, my original goal, Roxana, was to work for the FBI. That's what I thought I wanted.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
But what was that goal? What made you want to set that goal?
I was always fascinated with the crime, you know, scene, and like try to identify who committed the crime and why. And I think that that's something I always knew that I wanted to serve, and that was my way of trying to serve the world back then, to help resolve the crimes. So that's, I think, why I got into criminology. But at the end of the forensic psychology degree, I started feeling or experimenting that gut feeling. But yes, I want to serve, but not in this capacity anymore. And then I needed to listen to myself to really understand what I wanted to do back then. And you start feeling that the shift, but again, you gotta really pay attention to the signs. So I knew that forensic psychology, even though I knew I was going to finish the degree, was not going to be exactly what I was going to pursue. And another thing that helped me to understand that that was not my path anymore was just by doing volunteer work. So I did volunteer work for the police. I started getting in that kind of environment, and I knew that was just not exactly what I wanted to do. And then I started getting interested in human rights, and I didn't know exactly what that meant. I knew I wanted to pursue a different degree by the time I graduated from CUNY, but I didn't know in what. So I always tell people that in order to understand or like really know if that's something that you want to do. So for instance, in my case, I knew I wanted to do human rights, but I didn't know how. Like, how can I get involved with this? So I did an internship at the UN. I started working for nonprofits, and back then I didn't know what a nonprofit was. And I started working for nonprofits that supported Latina women in New York City and in nationwide. And one of those was the National Latina Institute. And so that was like my first exposure to this world. And I worked there, I went abroad, I studied abroad, came back with the same feeling. I want to help in human rights. And then it became more specific to women's rights and then education. And I decided I wanted another degree, and I went and I applied to NYU.
Oh.
Yeah, so now the Latina specific part of my life came about during that whole period. When I came back from abroad, I got a position working for a suicide prevention program And I always say in all the interviews I have that this is something that changed my life. And I didn't know going into that was going to be the case. So I started working for Life is Precious. It was a suicide prevention program that was created because young Latinas have the highest suicide attempts in New York City.
So talk to me about that. How is it? The numbers are staggering when I heard about it. So first of all, take me back a little bit and just tell me what made you go to work there, because you were looking into human rights and everything else. You started honing in on Latinas.
Mm-hmm.
What made you go to something that was that sensitive?
So I'm gonna use another word that is important to me, is destiny. So when I came back from abroad, I applied to a nonprofit, but my original position in that nonprofit was to work with in the mental health and substance abuse program that they had, and it was related to the forensic psychology degree that I got from Kenny. Yes. Mm-hmm. But I worked for that particular program for 6 months, and that was really not for me. So within the same nonprofit, they had other programs, and so I learned that they had this program called Life is Precious that was specific, that was created specifically to support young Latinas. So it caught my attention, and it was something that I felt that I could really relate by somehow helping to empower these young women. And so I asked to be transferred from one program to the other. So I can say that it wasn't that I knew what I was going to be doing going into it, because I had no idea. I just wanted to transfer from one program to the other. So I went from the mental health to the suicide prevention program, not knowing what I was going to encounter there.
And I think that's fascinating, because a lot of times people get into a job and they're like, okay, let me just stick through this. And the fact that you just went up and said, you know what, let me transfer to this, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So once you got there,
I transferred, and what happened was that I wasn't prepared for what I experienced. What I got was not a job, and I've always said this. For me, it was life-changing. It was a life-changing experience, and that's what I think I needed to experience or to go through to learn what my purpose, here is, and by hearing in life. Through the suicide prevention program, my job was to do intake interviews with the girls that were referred from the hospitals. So the Life is Precious, the way they work is they partner with hospitals, and the hospitals refer girls that are experiencing depression and suicidal ideations. My job was to interview the girls that were referred from the hospitals to do the intake interviews for the program. Wow. And the problem there for me was that I was interviewing girls on a daily basis that were telling me that they wanted to end their lives, so that they had tried to end their lives. And I always say that this was not a job. This was not just the kind of job that you go and do from 9 to 5 and you go home and disconnect, right? No, it doesn't work that way. For me, I stayed in that program for less than a year, and I can tell you that during those months I had dreams with those girls every night. And so at the time, I had just started my degree at NYU, so I spent my first semester at NYU working for the suicide prevention program, and it was too intense, so I couldn't really do both. So I quit the program, but I said I have to do something about this. And so that's how love started to come about. Like, I had an idea, I need to do something about this. I started pursuing a degree in nonprofit management. And I can tell you that from the beginning, again, I didn't know what a nonprofit was.
Right, it's so much behind it.
Yes.
Oh my God. So like, I'm gonna have you moving a little more this way.
So I spent 3 years at NYU, and I can tell you that the 3 years that I spent there, I used them to create the organization. Awesome. And then it goes back to your point about goal setting. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that it had a purpose to support young Latinas in New York City, but I mean, that's just too broad.
Yeah.
But and so how do you put it in specifics? Yes, and And I just started thinking about who would be interested in the school. And I want you to support this kind of idea that I had in mind. I make a parenthesis. I also worked before the suicide prevention program for a nonprofit called Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Oh yeah.
And that's all about mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
So just going back to my point about destiny, I think that somehow I was being trained to learn everything I needed to learn in order to create my own mentoring program. So I had that experience at Big Brothers, and so when I was at NYU, I kind of knew what a mentoring program needs in order to be implemented, to run it. And so I started reaching out to several departments. I started reaching out to faculty members, just putting my idea out there of what I wanted to do. And it took, I don't know, maybe a semester to put together all of that and to get the support I needed. And then I launched a pilot project at NYU where we recruited students from NYU to be mentors, and where we partnered with a nonprofit, and young Latinas were coming from this particular nonprofit, and we were running sessions at NYU.
Oh wow!
And that's how it all started. And then it just grew from there to me thinking, how can I make this more structured? How can I make it more sustainable and create something that I can scale? And so that's how, from that, the whole model for the organization was born.
And I think that's key because, especially with the nonprofit sector and in general in business, because nonprofits, ideally, is just another type of business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So generally what happens is that people just say, well, I have this idea, and then they just go and invest all this money into just launching the business. And what you did was perfect because you're like, let's just pilot it first. Let's just see what happens, what are the lessons learned, and then taking it and evolving it from there.
Yes.
So did you set new goals for this year?
First
of all, how long has Love Mentoring been around?
Since 2012.
Okay.
And so now that you mentioned being careful about how you plan a business, because I think that regardless if it's not for profit or for profit, you really have to be very careful about not stretching yourself too thin, or not or not scaling, or like pushing yourself to think that you have to be this big in order to feel that you're succeeding. Because to me personally, I think it's all about quality and not about quantity. So I needed to make sure from the beginning that the programs we were creating were working, that what we're doing was working before even considering creating a second program. So that's how Love came about, meaning we started the pilot project at NYU, then I came with this idea that it would be more structured if we partner with high schools and we run the sessions within the high schools, public high schools, and then we recruit mentors from all colleges and universities in New York City. So I partnered with one high school in 2012, and I stayed in that high school for maybe just a year before I decided, okay, let's go to another high school. So for the past almost 5 years, I've been growing the organization, or we've been growing the organization very slowly and gradually to now, I mean, going back to your point that what are the goals now, to now feeling, oh, now we can double this programming.
Because now, how many high schools are you in now?
7.
Okay.
So now that I personally feel, now we know kind of we know what we're doing, now we can scale it a little bit more.
So what were your goals for this year, for 2016?
To double what we have. That's my goal, without losing the quality of the programs. So I think that my current goal is to partner with a few more high schools, but my long-term goal and then we'll go back to the planning that I had when I created Love, is to create a school. That's my personal goal. Okay. Yes, I want to think about the possibility of creating Love schools where we can have and grow our impact among young Latinas. That's the goal for now.
Oh, that's amazing. So so this is still a very emotional, role that you're playing, because are you still in the programs, or
yes,
are you able to still be in the programs? Because I know with us growing, like, we've been doing the same thing with Dare to Be. Like, it was just, first let's make sure this is perfect before we go anywhere else. And we stayed in partnership with one particular shelter that we work in. But as we continue to grow, the more we grow, the less I could be on the ground. Because as CEO and founder, you have to be doing everything else, and you're kind of like, I miss the kids.
Yes.
So are you able to do that, still be in the programs? And if so, how are you managing the emotional side of everything? Because it's very emotional, like us having to go home, working with these children. So how do you find that balance?
And I can tell you that about the emotional part. I can tell you that this year we have students from our flagship school that have been part of Love since they were in 9th grade, and they're graduating from high school this year. When I go to East Harlem to try to join one of those sessions, I look at these girls and I really feel it, because I've seen them grow, because I've known them since they were, 13, 14 years old, and now they're graduating and they're like these young women, and they're amazing. To me, I feel that it's very important to really stay close to your programs, because that's how keeps you grounded and like why you're doing this. And you gotta, to me, I make it a point to go and participate in the session. So like, for instance, right now we were celebrating Thanksgiving, and I try my best to say I'm gonna go to the programs and just spend time with them, because to me that's the most important part. Spending time with the girls, and by the girls I mean our mentees and our mentors. So we do regular check-ins that back then, I feel now also that we have more capacity, right? So I feel that now we can bring all of our mentors here, now that we have a space of our own, and I just want to hear from them. I want to listen to what they have to say. I want to listen to what, feedback that they may have and how we can do things better. So to me, that's extremely important to stay very close to our participants, because without knowing what they're feeling or what they would want out of the program, we can't do our work. So to me, that is extremely important. Yes, we gotta do as directors our work and try to keep our organization going, but without forgetting why.
Yeah.
The why you created.
And that's what we do, because ours are 5 to 14, but we treat them as our clients, so we actually get year-end reviews by them. So I actually go in there and I get to hear everything about them and what they want to do differently and stuff, But it's just different because I can be with them every day now. Like I do still visit them and stuff, but it's just like, but still the takeaway is so great. And then you're saying, like you said, you're seeing them grow up, especially they're inside shelters for 3 to 4 years, and it's so hard. So, so how do you manage that with your personal life? Being able to juggle everything, and then, are you able to find a way to not take the emotional side or be able to separate from it when you go home? Because like you said, when you started the suicide prevention, you were carrying that through you all the time. So is the positive impact that you're making it easier for you to be able to move forward?
Yeah, I think that's the answer. I think that, when we want to be, or we decide to be social entrepreneurs, we know that you can't save the world. Can't even if I can't go and try to make each of my mentees' lives better directly. By going to their homes or working with them one-on-one every day. I can't do that. But I know that through what we're doing, through love, we are creating a positive impact. So that I think that the emotional part is not taken care of, but you feel better about it because you know that you are working to have that positive impact. In my personal life, I believe in balance. So I can't let my life be consumed just by doing what I do with my organization. I have to make sure that I have I take care of a little bit of everything in my life, and by that I mean my personal relationships, my family, myself. And that's one thing that if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else. Yes. So that's the most important part. So if ever I feel like I'm feeling overwhelmed, things are very busy, and that's, you may relate, that as you grow, things get a little bit more hectic and a little bit more, overwhelming. But you have to make sure that you take care of yourself. And I think that for me, that exercising, and that's something that comes natural to me, is something that keeps me grounded and balanced. And also just checking out, like I'm someone that needs to be alone and just recharge.
So that's good, because that's one of the things we try to teach people is, make sure that you fix your core.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it, you hit it on the nose, because we're like, without a strong core, there's not much that you could do for anyone. So you have to make sure that that's the case. So it's so great that you're doing that. So you're doing that through exercise and through just finding time for yourself to just like shut down.
Yes.
That's important. We interviewed someone earlier, actually last week, and he's so obsessed with his business that he doesn't do anything else other than that. And I'm like, you can't do that. You've got to do something good for your own,
Yes.
So just to recap it, for goal setting, it's definitely, like you said, being true to yourself, following that passion, not being afraid to find it, and honing in on what you have to be able to develop that. One of the things that we didn't mention, which you expressed, is flexibility. Flexibility and adaptability, because you went in thinking one thing, but then life just guided you to other paths. And I think that's really important for us, because once we do allow us to follow the paths that open up for us, like different things happen. I was in the corporate world for my entire career, and then through my volunteering, just discovered something else, and it's been a fascinating journey. So volunteering is another thing, just being able to open yourself up. And what you said was key, and I related to so much. When I was younger, I went to different careers trying to figure out, don't be afraid to just either volunteer or intern in different places until you figure out what's the right niche for you. Don't just get stuck to one thing. And then the other thing you also mentioned was partnering with the right people. You weren't afraid to, at NYU, to say, hey, who do I speak to? Just put it out there. I mean, put your information correct, right? Package it up, and so you're able to present it. Don't just go by the hip and expect people to follow it, but come up with something together and then present it, and you finally got the people to help you do the piloting program. And test it out. Before you execute it, do like the test to see what the lessons learned are and take it from there. And did I miss something else? The disconnect is really important. It's a lot of great things that we have to do. I'll try to make sure we cut it all.
No, thank you.
So no, it's been really fascinating. So 2017, what's in store for you, and how can we all help you with that?
For 2017, as I mentioned, we're interested in partnering with more public high schools. So in order for us to be able to grow, aside from partnering with public high schools, we need to recruit more and more mentors. So I always say that if you're interested in becoming a mentor, and this is for female college students or female university students all around New York City, you can reach out to us at lovementoring.org, and same for public high schools. The way we implement our mentoring programs is we partner directly with public high schools, and we work within the schools. So the best way is for public high schools to reach out to us and let us know that they're interested in having our program, the Love Mentoring program, in their schools. And just for mentors, for college students that identify with our mission, to reach out to us directly.
So a couple of questions. For the mentors, you said they have to be female?
Yes.
Okay, female and college students,
yes.
That's important. Is there some sort of requirement that they need to be able to fulfill besides the age?
No, just that they're female college students and that they really want to support young women, and particularly young Latinas in New York City.
And do the women have to be Latina?
No.
Okay,
No.
perfect. And what hours would they be working? Is there, because it's school hours?
Yeah, so it would depend. It would depend on the student, the mentor's availability. We have several programs, so depending on the one that fits their schedule the best, that's the one that they choose. Normally, that's how it works. So we have, as you said, it's during school, or most are after school, but during the week. So it would depend on, they would pick and choose the ones that is best for them.
Okay, and then for the high schools, is there specific requirements for them?
Yeah, the Latino population is the majority within the school. That's one of the standards that we look for in the schools.
Okay, so for high schools, the majority of students should be Latina. And then what locations are you in now with the 7 places that you're in?
In all boroughs. We haven't gone to Staten Island yet, but yes, for right now, we're in all boroughs. For the 4 boroughs, yes.
Is there an application process that either has to fill?
For the public high schools and mentors, I think the best way to start, yes, the mentors, they complete a recruitment process, but the best way to start is, again, by reaching out to the organization. I love mentoring.org.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. This is really amazing. So you could catch this on our YouTube channel. We will make sure that we send it out to the social media platforms. And then tomorrow we have a very exciting social media guru, George Torres, who we're going to be speaking with, who actually had about 20 years, 20 years before he launched his social media group company now. And it's a really amazing journey for him, and he'll probably give you some tips as well as to how you could go about your social media platform in your business. On that note, again, thank you so much. Really excited to have you here, and we'll see you soon. Ciao.